Hello everyone, this is John from Ettin Games and Hobbies in Humble, Texas. This is going to be our first video. In the future we're going to be having a number of these videos pretty much every month. And what we're going to be covering is tabletop miniature games. Now, we will have other videos in regards to RPGs and board games to highlight those products for you, but this one is specifically for miniature wargaming or sports type miniature games, which we'll get into as time goes on. Now, what we're going to be covering in these videos is a number of things. It's going to be everything from unboxing and highlighting new releases, or talking about upcoming products that you all are kind of anticipating. We're also going to cover tips and tactics for current hot games, so you can kind of get an edge over your friends that are not watching this video for some reason. On top of all that, we'll be highlighting whatever the tournament list is at that time. If it's Warhammer 40,000, if it's War Machine or Hordes, Bolt Action, Shadespire, whatever the hot game is for that month, we're going to go ahead and cover the top list. Now, for those of you that are interested in miniature games, but you're not quite sure if you want to get into because it feels like there's just too much to do, especially in regards to painting and building models, I'm going to be showing in future videos some very simple, basic techniques to get you painting and building those models and get them on the table right off the bat, so you don't have to sit there and spend months and months agonizing over if you're able to paint or not. We're going to show you some quick techniques to get you going right off the bat. Other things that we're going to cover are hobbying techniques, such as building a base for your miniatures to stand on. If you don't want them to stand on just a generic base, as you'll see some of our miniatures we're going to highlight here shortly. You want to make them look like they're in a desert or in a starship or just in outer space. We're going to go through some techniques to help you get a good quality miniature. And one of the last closing parts of each of these video segments, we're going to be covering things like gamer etiquette. And it's not necessarily to shame or embarrass anybody. It's just to eliminate certain aspects of our hobby so we can be more inclusive to everybody and invite or entice more participants into our games. That's one of the biggest hang-ups with some games, is they can become stagnant if we remain exclusive. So the more inclusiveness we can get, the better quality of game and players we're going to have. Now today, we're just going to be focusing on a brand new game from Fantasy Flight Games. It's the Star Wars Legion. We have an advanced copy that we've got yesterday. It's going to be released on March 22nd. You'll be able to get it at a midnight release at Ettin Games and Hobbies in Humble, Texas. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this box opened up for you. All right, so we're going to start off with this right here. This is the Star Wars Legion box. It's a miniature game of epic battles in a galaxy far, far away. Now, inside of this box are a number of items that you're going to need to play the game. It's designed for for 2 players. You might in the future see some game options or expansions that allow you to involve more players. If you want, say, 2 or 3 more players, that might be an option further down the line, or you and your friends might come up with that. So the rest of these contents, in every single one of these boxes, you're going to get the Learn to Play guide. Inside this guide, it shows you all the contents, every single component, how to put it together, which is going to be the most important thing that I'll get to in just a bit, the rules and the more advanced rules in here, and then what to expect from Fantasy Flight Games in the future. Another interesting aspect of this Learn to Play guide on the back, which will come in handy, is a quick reference guide. You don't see this often with some games, and this is a very, very good thing for any new player or even a veteran player, especially starting out with a brand new game. It gives you an opportunity just to cut through all the book, all 30 some odd pages of this, and just go to what's most important while you're sitting down playing the game. So this is in every box. And if you don't have the box or you manage to lose this, on the Fantasy Flight Games website, if you go under the resources for Star Wars Legion, they have a PDF, totally free, doesn't cost you anything. So you'll have access to those rules if you lose that or if your friend needs a copy. Now, one of the first other things that you're going to pull out is every game has all these tokens. It seems like a lot, but you're not going to use most of these. And your opponent, he might be using some of these, you might use some of the others. These are everything from objective markers to dodge tokens, which we'll get to in future episodes. But every game will be using some or all of these tokens. These are all punch-out tokens. It's on a sturdy cardboard, so you don't have to have that extra weight of it being an acrylic or a metal token, which is a nice feature. If you've ever played a miniature war game, lugging around a number of tokens, it can get a little heavy and carrying all that product. So that's a very good thing they got there. All right, so I'm going to get into the meat of this box. There's a number of things in here that we're going to try to cover. And the first thing, before we get to the miniatures, let's go ahead and talk about the dice. In true Fantasy Flight Games tradition, they've got their own very unique dice. These are a number of 8-sided and 6-sided dice with their own special icons. Fantasy Flight Games, everything from their X-Wing miniature game to their Star Wars role-playing game, or even their new Genesis system, they all use some sort of custom dice that have a variety of symbols instead of numbers. And now, does that mean that you can use a normal 6-sider or 8-sider that you have? You can, but you're just going to have to be very conscious of what each of the numbers are going to represent. As you can see here, what I'm going to put down is a number of dice here, so you can see the different type of symbols. Right there is an example of the different type of symbols. What you're seeing there is a miss. That's the white dice that's coming up with that facing. The other one's a hit. And the other one is what they call a surge that you'll see in the gameplay. It allows you to adjust another dice. So that's a pretty interesting feature with all of Fantasy Flight products, the unique type of dice. All right, so what else we got in here? Another staple Fantasy Flight Games is their own special rulers here. Now these rulers or measuring sticks will have they're usually hinged, so it allows you to, whenever you're trying to get a miniature to move and you want to go around a corner, all these have a hinge and a certain range aspect, and these will all be available in each and every box. They're just a neat way to figure out the best way to move or shoot around corners, depending on whatever the situation calls for. Like I said, this is always a standard product when it comes to Fantasy Flight Games. Now, let's get on to the miniatures, because that's what a lot of people want. First thing that you're going to get, or that at least we're going to cover, is most games that are miniature war games, they don't come with starting terrain. The Fantasy Flight Games, especially Star Wars Legion, in this case, does. We're going to have 2, 4, 6, 8 pieces of terrain. They're just little obstacles, little barriers, so you can at least have something out on the game to go right off the bat. Now you might, in the future, want to get your own Star Wars related material. Maybe you want to recreate the farm that Luke Skywalker grew up on Tatooine. There's a number of buildings that are going to be available down the line, and you'll be able to set up your own terrain and recreate a number of battles. And that's what's going to be probably one of the key points to Star Wars Legion is over other miniature games with the Star Wars IP, is that you are going to be able to recreate battles and determine maybe a different outcome. maybe the rebels actually won on Hoth and drove off the Empire. Maybe the Empire didn't lose the Death Star in the first movie. These are things that you'll be able to recreate with this product. Now, getting back to the miniatures, I'm going to put out a couple of these so you can see. The first one that I've already managed to put together is the Luke Skywalker. He is the Rebel Commander. The Empire Commander is Darth Vader. Every game is going to involve at least one commander, possibility of more commanders after that. I've already put together Luke Skywalker. It's very easy to put together. These models are 1 to 2 pieces, as opposed to other games where you're looking at 4, 5, 6, or more. Now I'm going to go and put a size comparison so you can get an idea, because that's one of the main questions I get from some of our customers is, how big are these miniatures? Well, it looks to be about a 28 millimeter to 32 millimeter size that they're operating at, and it's a true scale. And what that means is the model is proportioned to a normal human being. And one of the other questions in regards to the miniature size is, how big is it in regards to the Star Wars Imperial Assault? Well, I've managed to put here in front, right next to Luke Skywalker, is Ahsoka Tano from Imperial Assault. And you can see that the size is not that much different. What that means to you as a gamer, if you don't want to run Luke Skywalker as your commander, but that we don't have rules for, say, Ahsoka Tano, but you really like the Ahsoka Tano model, like myself, you can swap out those two models. You still need the core set, because the core set's got all the rules you need in it. But if you happen to have some other miniatures from Imperial Assault and you want to, say, swap out Ahsoka Tano from Luke Skywalker, you can totally do that. Just use the Luke Skywalker rules, call it a day. Now, as I said, true scale. The other difference is the model to the other model next to Luke Skywalker is a Primaris Space Marine from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 line. This is also a 32 millimeter scale miniature, but it's what they call heroic scale. The proportions are larger. There's a lot more detail. Some would say unnecessary detail versus more simplistic detail. Now, what that means for you is not a lot. You can still play this game. It's just giving you a size scale difference. Okay, so let's get to some of the other miniatures. All right, let's see here. All right, so every box is going to also include, for your miniatures, these 2 big packets of bases. And these are what you're going to put your miniatures on. You're going to glue them down. That's something I'm going to get to here in a minute, especially in regards to the miniatures. There's a little bit of misconceptions out there about this product, so I'm going to get to that shortly. Now, everything is separated into individual bags. The different types of troopers are going to get their own individual bag. The ATRT, if I'm saying that correctly, or what I call the Rebel Chocobo for you Fantasy Flight or Final Fantasy game fans. And they're all going to be separated in different bags, as well as the Stormtroopers. As I mentioned before, these miniatures are 1 to 2 piece models, and it's not all that bad in regards to being a hobbyist, or even putting them together, which is another concern that gamers and customers will have in regards to a miniature game is, oh my God, there's so many pieces. What am I going to do? It's just too much work. Well, let me alleviate some of your fears. In this Learn to Play guide, right in the front, we have a how to build the miniatures, and you'll be able to see very easily the step-by-step process to put 1 or 2 pieces together. Now, what I was talking about earlier, some of the misconceptions about the miniatures, is when it comes to Fantasy Flight games, and especially Star Wars Legion, we have a number of people that believe to some extent that the models are snap fit or they fit snugly in there and you don't need to apply glue. It's partially correct. These miniatures are going to need to be glued to their bases. As I already mentioned before, I already had to glue Luke Skywalker together. I'm going to put him back down here in front so you can see him. And let me find where I put Darth Vader here. He was a very good example of this. All right. Now, I'm going to put this in front of the camera. All right, so here is Darth Vader and all of his pieces. He's got 3 different pieces plus his base. All right, as you can see, I'm going to put him together. The first two pieces are going to actually fit quite snugly. That doesn't mean it's 100% secure, but it does fit in there quite nicely. You can see I can turn him upside down. He's not going to fall apart. Now here's the kicker. It's trying to get his arm in there, and his arm will snugly fit, but see, it just fell off. And then comes the issue of trying to have your miniature on the stand and moving him around. When you're moving these miniatures around and they're not glued down, as you move them around, they're going to be falling over, and that's going to become an issue for you during play. So, with that in mind, I highly recommend that even if your friends or the videos on other videos online, or even the product says you don't have to super glue, use super glue. Go ahead and secure those miniatures. So when you're painting them and playing with them during whichever game you're playing, you don't have to worry about them falling apart. It's easy. You don't have to clip anything. You don't have to shave anything down. You don't need an X-Acto knife. Everything's taken apart in individual pieces. So it's not that difficult. We got a step-by-step guide for a 2 or 3 piece model. So keep that in mind. All right. So we got through these products. All right. So let's talk a little bit about gameplay. The game, we're not going to demo here, but when you go to Ettin Games and Hobbies, starting tomorrow, which is the 9th of March, we are going to be having our demo copy in there all the way through March 22nd. We'll have it available afterwards if you still want to come in and learn how to play. But on March 22nd, the game actually releases, which, once again, we're going to go ahead and do a midnight release. Now, the demo, we're going to have a number of our employees are going to be learning the game, myself included, and then we'll be teaching the other employees and our 2 owners. So everybody knows how to play this game. We can come in and demo. And then we'll have our own, we have some of our own miniature game community that they're kind of the leaders in the community who can teach other people how to play the game. So it's going to be always there, and we're going to basically want to grow and enrich this community so everybody knows how to play the game. There's no misconceptions, there's no misunderstandings. Everybody knows how to play this game. All right, so this game's going to go through a number of phases, and they're very simple. And don't let the simplisticness of the dice rolls or the steps throw you off on it's an easy game or it's a difficult game. The dice mechanics are just to make the game flow a little bit easier. What's going to make this game very interesting for you as a gamer, whether you're a board gamer, or a miniature war gamer, or just new to the whole gaming hobby, is the tips and or the tactics and strategies that a gamer is going to be able to pull off with the different units. Okay, so one of the last few pieces of the game that's going to, or the contents that's going to come into a big factor in playing the game are the cards that come in each and every box. Now the biggest and most important one are these unit cards. Now these unit cards are going to feature the special abilities of those units and the unit itself, how much it costs to run the unit, all of its special abilities, what you need on the dice to attack or defend with, and more importantly, in the upper right hand corner, by my fingers is the point value of each and every unit. Now, what the point value means for you as the player, beyond just the contents of this box, is when you play more games and you add on more expansions, which there are expansions coming out, not box set expansions, but other miniatures to add on. So like the ATST, General Veers, Leia Organa, they're all coming out as expansions that you can add on to the existing box. Now, when you're playing a game of Star Wars Legion, you're going to center around a number of points. And what the points does is keeps the game relatively fair between you and your opponent. Now, you might want to field a bunch of just basic stormtroopers and the weakest commander. You don't want to run, say, Darth Vader. You want to have General Veers in there so you can fit more stormtroopers, because you want mass stormtrooper charge across the battlefield, blasters blazing away and decimating your foe. While your opponent, he might be wanting to run Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and a whole bunch of the ATRTs. He might have his own strategy involved there. Now, each of these units have an associated point cost. And it looks like the contents of this box is about 400 points per side. And the tournaments or organized play that we're seeing, it's going to be 800 points per player. And that doesn't mean you have to play at that point level. You can play at any point level that you want. But when you're structuring your force, you and your opponent are going to want to agree on a certain point limit, so you don't end up with twice as many miniatures as your opponent, and it all of a sudden becomes unbalanced. Unless, of course, you guys are recreating some sort of scene or battle from a book, movie, cartoon, or like the upcoming TV series. You might want to recreate one of these, and to do so, it might be a little lopsided, but that's what we call a narrative battle. And you want to forge your own narrative. So that's between you and your opponent. But at least with these unit cards, you're able to see the point difference, so you can kind of get a good feel for how big or how small you want the game to be. And also with this set of cards is a number of ambush, what they call ambush cards. There's a variety of cards that play into whenever you're constructing your army and your command phase. You can select a number of these cards, which some of them are ambush cards. There are push cards, assault cards. There's a variety that you get to choose from. And what these cards are going to do is help give you some special advantages during gameplay. Now, gameplay, as I talked about earlier, you're going to be rolling a number of dice, determine if you are successful or unsuccessful in defeating a certain unit. Say stormtroopers fighting against Luke Skywalker. Can they hit him? Can he deflect it with his lightsaber? And so on. Now, the game round, it comes down to both players are going to play a total of 6 game rounds, and then the game is over. And to determine who is the winner, it's going to come down to if you manage to wipe out your opponent's, all of his forces are gone, there's no more miniatures on the table, or at the end of those 6 game rounds, you figure out who's got the most objective victory marks. And that's where it could get a little dicey for you if you are just concentrating on wiping out your opponent, but your opponent is over here sitting claiming objective after objective. And if he has that one guy that's been hiding that whole time, and he's got all these victory points that you've been just ignoring, he might end up winning the game with just one guy left. So you got to really think about how you're going to play the game. And that's where the tactics and strategy comes involved. Because in this game, you both take a turn activating a unit. So once you figure out what type of game you're going to play, you're going to go through a number of phases. And you're going to figure out the priority, which player gets to go first, which goes second. So your first phase is going to be the command phase. And that's basically where you're going to be selecting your command cards. You're going to determine who gets to go first. That's what they call priority. Then you're going to issue orders to your different units. Now during the activation phase, that is where you're going to choose a unit, and you're going to activate that unit and place an order token. We'll get into that as you play the game, and then you're going to resolve that action, which could be an attack, could be a defense, could be something that's moving, simple as moving. Now, the activation phase, that's probably the biggest hurdle that some war gamers, miniature gamers, and even board gamers might not understand. It's going, instead of you taking your full turn and moving all of your pieces and activating them, you are going to do your miniatures, activate them all the way through, and then your opponent is going to choose a unit, activate it all the way through, and then it's going to go back and forth until all units have been activated, and then you're going to end that phase. Well, the end phase for the game round. And then you're going to start the next game round. Who's got priority? Who's going to go first? Who's going to go second? All the way through to the end of that phase. And you're going to keep doing that for a total of 6 game rounds. And then at the conclusion, that's where you figure out if you've totally wiped out your opponent or if you manage to claim more victory points than your opponent. So there's a lot of details going on with this game. That's it's not just a simple dice roll game, and the dice rolls are not even that simplistic. Especially when you start rolling in these different ambush cards, attack cards, try to do all these sneaky things to your opponent, trying to capture objectives, battling it out. Which unit do you want to activate versus which one do you want to just go ahead and hold off on? Do you want to concentrate on taking out Luke Skywalker, or do you want to worry about those ATRTs coming up your flank? So there's a lot of strategy involved in this game, especially with the activation and determining your command deck. So it's something to think about when you're looking at these rules. Now, one of the things as I'm wrapping up here about this box. This box is a 2-player box. There are enough miniatures in here for 2 people and to sit down and play a game. Now, if you and your buddy both want to get the box, I'm going to recommend to you, especially whenever you come into Ettin Games and Hobbies, both of you go ahead and buy a box. And this is the reason why. In this box is enough tokens, rulers, and everything for you to travel around with. Now, if both you and your buddy are playing this game, you both are going to want your own set. Because what if you're playing somewhere else, he's playing over here with a different group of guys, or they're at a different store, or whatnot. You want to have your own tokens and everything. But then you're thinking to yourself, now, John, I'm going to have all these extra miniatures. You're right, you are going to have these extra miniatures. You guys can split both these boxes. You take all the Rebellion, your buddy takes all the Empire. Now you've got these 2 massive armies that you'll be able to do so many different combinations that the game is going to take on a whole new life for you. And I'm going to recommend that if you guys split it down the middle, which is really, I think, the best option, is one of you take Luke Skywalker, one of you take Darth Vader, and with that extra set of miniatures, you both go ahead and take the opposite commander that you had. So now you've got one of each commander, and your opponent or your buddy, they've got one of each commander. So what if you want to recreate a scene, maybe make Luke Skywalker turn to the dark side like during the Return of the Jedi when he's sitting there with the Emperor? He could have turned and cut down his father right there, just like the Emperor wanted him to. Or what if Darth Vader actually sided with the Rebellion? You can do all that with these 2 miniatures. So that's just something to consider when you and your buddy are going out there to buy this box set. Both of you buy one, split it down the middle, double your army size, and both of you got a full set of tokens, dice, rulers, and all the cards you need for your command deck, for your different units, and you are set. So, in conclusion, Star Wars Legion is going to be available on March 22nd. On March 9th, going forward, Ettin Games and Hobbies, we'll be having our own copy in store for you to try out. And we'll have our employees on hand. Kaz is one of them, and myself will be on hand to run you through the game if you'd like, or if you're like the rest of us, you just want to learn it on your own. And that's going to be available, as I said, starting March 9th, which should be today when you're watching this lovely video. Now, it'll be located in our game board library, which features over 450 games that you can choose from, but we know you're there for Star Wars Legion. For those wanting to know when you can get Star Wars Legion, March 22nd, we're going to have a midnight release, and then on the 24th, that Saturday, March 24th, we're going to have an event release party. So come on in with your box set and participate in a variety of games, and look forward to a series of events every month, the first Saturday of every month, including tournaments in the future. And with that said, my name is John. I'm with Ettin Games and Hobbies, and we'll see you later.